Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. All right. So I'm Crystal Legends. We always do this thing called Insight where we talk about things that are going on in the community. For anybody watching, your name is Shep.
Yep.
How did you first become involved with all these different veterans events that are going on?
But being a veteran myself is kind of near and dear to my heart. But I've
Hmm.
been, after I got out, I spent probably the next 25 years or so working public safety, whether it's law enforcement, fire,
Hmm.
EMS, these kind of things. I finally retired out a few years ago, working full time as a paramedic,
Hmm.
and kind of being on the front lines. I'm there a lot of times when veterans are at their worst moment,
Yeah.
and I've had to deal with PTSD. I've had my own issues I've had to deal with, go through the VA and things. There's a lot of guys out there that feel like they can't or will not go to the VA for whatever reason.
Right.
And then there's delays in getting clinical treatment, this kind
Hmm.
of thing. And I have searched for years trying to figure out, is there a way that we can help
Yeah.
with the problem? I've been there. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's too late.
Yes.
And then I've been there at times where I've took guns out of people's hands, talked them down out of bad situations with whatever's going on.
Hmm.
And, you know, I see them for a few minutes and then I may wind up seeing them again. So I realize that there's nothing changed in there.
Right.
And that's kind of always bothered me is what's changing? What are we doing to make a difference? And I started studying and looking into these things. My I got a son that's a veteran and one that's not, but he's very involved as well. And they got me looking into the video game thing.
Yeah.
And I started noticing there's something to this.
Hmm.
And I started researching. And I spent about a year digging, researching out on programs that involve video gaming and digital therapies, and found out that there's been studies going on for the last 40 years into this. But there's really nobody implementing these things.
Right.
I think the VA did it. They started a study in this thing in around 2016, 18, roughly around in there. And as everything else, it runs into a budget issue, and then
Sure.
it kind of got dropped. Now
So does the
VA,
gaming help?
yep,
It's like a stress
it
relief?
does. We'll look into it, and if we've got time, I can quote a couple of these studies, and I've got files
Sure.
full of them that I've printed off over the years
Yeah.
looking in this thing. And I started looking for a way that a veteran can find a relief from what's going on. And the more I began to study, the more I began to understand that there's a huge difference in our younger veterans than what they are in my age and older.
Hmm.
A lot of it has to do with the fact that we live in a digital world now. A lot of schools have taken books out of the classrooms.
Yeah.
You take a
I don't
computer
even know
home
if
with
my sons know how to write. Like they can barely,
Exactly.
because they type everything.
Exactly. Um, I look at have you ever received a text message and misinterpreted what it was saying?
Of course.
I mean, everybody does. I despise a text message. I
Yeah.
hate them with a passion. I'm that kind of person. If you ain't got time to call me, just don't need to talk to me.
You're like, don't bother.
No. But there's, in that world, living in that linear type world, interpersonal communication, what you're saying is only about 10% of what your brain's interpreting.
Uh-huh.
Is what comes out of your mouth is a very small part of it.
Okay.
Your brain is interpreting the environment, your mood, your temperament, the inflection in your voice, all these things that are
Mhm.
going on. And in a world where we live in a bedroom with a
Mm-hmm.
cell phone, and this is how kids are raised now.
Yeah.
It's not, and I'm not saying it's their fault. It's not. We've pushed them.
But you miss the human connection.
Exactly. You do not learn. I've even seen MRI evidence where they've done over the years that shows a difference in the brain shape now
Mhm.
of a teenager versus 25 years ago.
Ironically, I took my kids for doctor's appointments yesterday, and that was one of the questions was, how much screen time did they get? And she said, I bet you they're going to start putting legal limits on how much people, and especially like kids growing up,
Right.
can use it. And
They
I was
really,
like, let's go.
really should.
Yeah.
It's sad, but we've allowed it to happen
Hmm.
in the course of convenience, I guess, is what we want to look at things,
Right.
modern technology. But what we have done is we've created an entire generation that are incapable of communicating emotion.
Yes. I've had this conversation. This is, yes, I
If you've
completely
raised-
agree. You're
yeah,
right.
If you've raised teenage children in
Yes.
the last 15 years, you know exactly
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. Well, that has a lot to do with what's going on. And when you do traditional therapies, for PTSD, depression, anxiety, these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing? You put them in a room, shut the door, and we're talking about emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You're speaking to a person that's not capable of expressing
Of
emotion.
speaking about
They don't know
emotion.
how to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they don't want to or they're being hard to get along with. None of these things. Like a lot of people like to blow it off with kids, just hard to get along with. You know, I've had to rethink a lot of things myself at my age, looking into this kind of thing. And I was thinking, when I first started, this was a joke. And then the more I read and the more studies I saw, and I began to see that there's really something to this.
It was very real. I mean, I agree. I mean, I know there's so many different factors of this, but I have this conversation often with my kids. Is when we were at the bus stop, we all had to talk to each other. When they're at the bus stop, they're not speaking to each other. They're all on phones, so they don't make those connections growing up. They don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to deal with their emotions.
Go to a restaurant and watch people sitting across.
Yeah,
the
the whole
from each
family's
other.
on their phone.
Yeah,
They're like,
They're
why are y'all
talking-
here?
Exactly, you do this
Yeah.
at home, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
We've kind of allowed it to get out of hand,
Mm-hmm.
and now what we're talking about doing is not in excess. It goes back to that limiting screen time
Right.
kind of thing. The things that we're doing are limited to an hour to 2 hours a day, where there are syndromes and conditions out there now, especially since COVID passed by. There's actually people having video game addiction issues, and there's all this kind of stuff going on.
Sure.
We're trying to stay out of that area
Right.
by limiting what we're doing.
Everything's good in the right amount.
Exactly. And what we started doing, and the more I began to study, the more I began to become incredibly heartbroken by the things that's going on. I command an American Legion post, and I'm second in command of an AMVETS post, and I'm on a committee for Salute, which is pretty much everything veteran in Lenoir County, period. And in our research and our looking into it, everybody, you're aware of the 22 a day,
Yeah.
what they're talking about. What we're learning now is those numbers are not even near to the ballpark,
Really.
not even close, nowhere near it. We're in the levels now of over twice that a day.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of them in the 18 to 29-year-old. And there's a reason for that. And I've been a counselor for a number of years myself, and I've worked with a lot of people up front. That's kind of probably why my passion drove me into being a paramedic, being out in the field with people and kind of things like that. But when you're dealing with an individual, I'll give you an example how this works. Human male, the frontal lobe of the brain doesn't develop till you're 25 or later,
Right.
period. You've raised that mind in a digital world. So you've lost the communication ability as far as emotions are concerned. They can regurgitate facts all day long,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what we've created, a fact machine that doesn't have the emotions.
Right.
Now you put that brain in a war zone. Now it develops in the war zone.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes reality. And it's hard for us to imagine sitting on the outside, and for those that's, and I need to put down by no means, but for those that's never been shot at or pinned down, it's,
Look, that's different.
you don't understand. Picture your worst nightmare that wakes you up in the middle of the night, sweating and scared to
Yeah.
death. All right, this is where they live 24 hours a day, 7
Yeah.
days a week, in that feeling.
Yeah.
The adrenaline rush, the hypersensitivity, everything that's going on, all these trauma responses, intrusive thoughts, all this stuff is building up.
Mm.
They come home, they get roughly 1 week worth of discharge. During that week, a lot of it is spent turning in equipment, and there's some branches that even make them pay for their worn out equipment that they were issued.
Mm.
So then at the end of that week, they're put out the gate, door shut, boom, okay.
Go back to like regular life.
Yeah. Well, they were never taught regular life.
Right.
They don't know what regular life is.
Right.
We quit teaching. A lot of schools don't teach how to manage a checkbook. They don't
No,
teach how to manage
They do not.
your mortgage, how to look at insurance, how to take care of cell phone bills, car payments, car insurance, maintenance. None of these things are taught now, hardly at all. There may be some somewhere out there. If they are, good for them. But,
Homeschools.
yeah.
That's probably
Yeah.
it.
I'm guilty of that. We homeschooled our
Yeah.
kids.
There you go. That's why your kids probably know.
Yeah. But they're put out the gate, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're living in the nightmare.
Yeah.
Which to us, the war zone would be the nightmare, but that to them, there was structure. They had people told them where to be, what to do, what was going on around them. They were trained on how to do everything they needed to know how to do. Now you're put out here, you have no training, no structure, and no understanding of what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Then if you throw a spouse, fiance, or you throw kids in the mix with it, all the extra stress that's added on top of
Yeah.
that. By the VA's own admission, it can be as much as 2 years before you can get approved for your benefits.
It's horrible.
So, and it's just like applying for Social Security.
Yeah.
Most of them wind up having to either hire a lawyer or got somebody that's really good at writing things, can get it done and get them through there. But even in that time period, they've come home from a horrible situation. Now they're out here where they don't have any clue what to do, and there's no help. So they wait until that time where they're finally approved and they can get in and get to some counseling, get with a therapist, and it starts to help. But the problem is getting to the root of the problem. They don't know how to communicate it to you. Now we're at a situation, when I was speaking in front of our State Department level, we were getting the numbers of 47 a day that are not making it to that 2 years. This is, I mean, we're at an epidemic level. This is horrible.
Yeah.
It's insane. And you've got people scrambling, trying to figure out ways to fix this problem. And I'm not taking away from anybody. Don't take anything I say as putting anybody down, because everybody's doing the best they can do with what they got.
Sure.
The problem is most counseling and most therapy is based on 70s, 80s, and 90s models. Even though you've tweaked it a little bit, changed this, changed that, you're still basing it on an old model of therapy that worked at my age group and older. But
who were
doesn't
raised
work.
completely different.
Exactly. But it don't work on 19-year-olds that well, or 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds. Their mind grew up literally in a war zone, and now you've thrown them out here, and they're trying to cope and figure out how to transition over.
Right.
And it's almost impossible. It's hard to believe that we expect that to even happen.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there's agencies working on things, this kind of stuff, to do it. But what we have learned through the gaming and what we developed is called the Retreat Project. And this is not a one-size-fits-all. This is not a cure-all for everything, by no means. We're not even expecting to think that. But what we are doing is it's just one step in the right direction, hopefully. We're providing a place to go to, and the use of video games, and I can quote here in a moment some of the studies that's been done and show how this actually works. But by having a place to go to when they're overwhelmed.
Okay.
If you're having one of those days where you just, like I said, you're living in that nightmare 24 hours a day. From my own personal experience with PTSD have you ever tried to speak logic to a 3-year-old throwing a fit on the floor?
Yeah.
It doesn't work, does it?
No.
And that's not a put down. Reason why that child is throwing a fit is because they don't know how to communicate how they feel and what's going on.
They can't talk. They can't say what's going on.
They can't get it out there. So their brain just panics, and the only thing left to do is throw a fit. Older age, fits turn dangerous, unfortunately. And it's due to the same reason. They cannot communicate how they're feeling, what they feel about the situation, what they've been through, and get out everything that's going on in their mind. And all of our therapies pretty much are all based on the same thing. You're still going to sit them in a room and shut a door and try to talk to them. Even cognitive behavioral therapy, eye movement therapy, there's a lot of things that help and work, not taken away from them, but it's all based on still being able to talk to somebody. How do you talk to somebody that can't talk? Therein lies the problem.
Right.
Okay. And it's a hard road for folks to try to travel down. And what we did with this is a place that when that day gets so overwhelming that they cannot take it, and their options are, to jump off the proverbial cliff, which 47 a day do, or go seek help that you can't afford to pay for. This is a place they can come to, and it's housed within a veteran community. The first one that we have up in operation right now is actually housed in G.I. Joe's Military Museum on Highway 11, south of Kinston. They allowed us to use the space. We built a room in, put the equipment in, and it uses video games and digital technology in a therapeutic manner. And by playing video games, and I know it sounds ridiculous to a lot of people. I've had people rage at me and scream at me and everything else over this stuff, and it's all cool. That's their own trauma responses.
Yeah.
Let 'em. But I started playing it with my sons just as a way to connect with them because they don't live at home anymore. These are my kids. I want to play, talk
Yeah.
to them, play with them at night and stuff online and stuff. And even my wife began to say, there's a difference in you after you've played that game for a couple hours.
You're happier.
Yeah, you're a different person. And, she, bless her heart, she's put up with me for 28 years dealing with my problems. But as the more I researched and began to find out why it does what it does, how does it actually work? On the surface, it's just an endorphin release,
Right.
which is a mood enhancer. It's, a happy drug in your brain, that gets released and you're able to calm down and relax and breathe for a few minutes. You get so immersed in what's going on that you don't have time to think about the problems.
Yeah, the stress melts away.
Exactly. And you get to let your body calm down, let the adrenaline levels sink down, the cortisol levels decrease a little bit. Then hopefully you can go out and face the rest of that day, deal with what you got to go deal with. And it's not, like I said, it's not a permanent thing, but what's going on inside of these games now, even your game companies are rewriting the games. Most what they call FPS are first player shooter games. You can't get through by yourself anymore.
You need a team.
You got to have a team. They call them clans online.
Okay.
I'm learning all this stuff myself, trust me.
Right.
'Cause my kids are teaching me this stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'll get there in a minute. But while you're working with these people online, what is going on, your brain literally, chemically wise, doesn't know the difference between what's on that screen and what's in real life. So as you're working through the game and you're talking on a headset, speaking to other people, everybody's seeing the same images, the same things going on. Your brain literally begins to create pathways to communicate
Okay.
because you're all responding to what's going on within the game, and you're responding in a way to communicate that to somebody else.
So it's
And-
teaching that human connection.
Yes, exactly. That's a big part of it, is you're reconnecting with people, but your brain is literally starting to write pathways to communicate, and you don't even realize it. You're just having fun playing a game. But as you're talking together and working together in that game, your brain's learning to respond and communicate in ways that you weren't taught to do.
Awesome.
And that opens the door. There's, we kind of kick the door in a little bit where therapy can get their foot in the door now. This is our goal, is not to spend the rest of your life playing video games unless you just like playing video games.
Sure.
But the video games is a doorway. Once you start communicating, start reacting, and there's many other things going on. But now our hopes is to get you to where you can communicate with a therapist, and a therapist can begin to work you through your issues. And the AMVETS post that I'm part of, they jumped on board with it, helped me get this thing up and running, create it, and make it start happening. This was the vision they helped me create.
Yeah.
And now it's growing to the point to where the Greenville VA is on board with us. They're helping us with it. North Carolina, they sent their program director down to come to look at it. They're working with us on it
Amazing.
through the VA. Like I said, this was research they started doing back years ago, and then budget wouldn't let them carry on with it. So now that we're doing the legwork, they're like, hey, look, let's get in here and do this. They're jumping on it. And we've got several counselors that are excited and on board with it and want to get in and help, and they've actually recommending people come through this.
That's great.
Come to us. It's like I said, we're not talking about a cure. This is not therapy. This is therapeutic. It's not therapy. We're not doctors. We're not claiming to be doctors. We don't claim to know no more than anybody else. Exactly. That's what it's about. It's a place they can come to and unwind.
Right. A safe environment.
Exactly.
Like-minded people probably there,
You're around just veterans. That's what's around this place.
That's what I'm saying. Y'all know, the same experiences and understand, probably why they're coming.
Some of there's other things that going on in there, such as exposure therapy. You begin to see, this is a therapy that's been in use for years and years and years through counseling, VA, and everywhere else, is that you bring back up the trauma, but you do it in a safe place. So now your body starts to learn that I can think about that, but I don't have to respond to it. This is what gets you. Every time a trigger comes up, something happens. And I used to be the guy that if a car backfired or somebody slammed into something, I'm hiding under a bumper. I was that guy, panic, dug under something.
I've seen it happen. reenactment in Beaufort with the pirates and the
yeah.
cannons going off. I watched a friend of mine go completely white, start shaking. It took me a minute to realize what was happening, but he was right back in war
Yeah.
that fast, you know?
There's some things that a smell, a sound,
Mm-hmm.
you know, an image you see, and you don't never know when it's going to happen.
That's what I'm saying.
You come across something and it triggers all those
Yeah.
memories. They pile in there at one time,
Mm-hmm.
and then the physiological responses take over.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, you're completely out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Well, exposure therapy, what it does is you're seeing the things on the screen that caused the trauma to start with. This is how the therapy works that they go through the VA or wherever else. They're going to put you through these images, cause you to remember these things. But your brain begins to realize I'm sitting in a safe place.
Right.
So now I can think about it, but I don't have to respond to it because I'm not in danger anymore.
Right.
And as time goes on and progressively as the physiological responses start to go down, now you can have your memories and remember what went on, but you don't respond to them the same way anymore. And you can get on with your life. You don't lose control like that anymore. And it helps physically and mentally helps you survive, because a lot of these things going on over a period of time cause a lot of damage to your body as well. And by reducing these responses, and this is kind of where we're stepping on new ground that some people may not like, some people don't want to go to. Some of the folks through the VA are excited about it because typically therapy is we seek treating the brain and then reduce the physiological responses because we're treating the brain. But if the physiological responses are so strong, how do you get to the mind?
You can't get to the brain.
We're coming at it from a back door.
Mm-hmm.
This is reducing the physiological responses. So now you can speak to the brain in a more logical way.
Mm-hmm. And they're capable to
And
do
capable
the
of
therapy.
responding to you then. And it takes time. It's not a perfect thing. If somebody's never been exposed to any of this stuff, when they come in, typically they go downhill for about a month.
Okay.
Because you bring in stuff back up.
Right.
But over a period of time, it begins to walk it back down. And then your brain realizes, that loud sound is not anything that's going to hurt me now.
Right.
So I don't have to respond to it anymore.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, it helps. We've got guys in there that are coming to this program from 19 years old to, I know of at least a couple of Vietnam veterans that are coming. One of them is from the early parts of Vietnam, an older gentleman, but his granddaughter comes in and she's teaching him how to play the game.
That's cool.
And he loves that interaction.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he'd tell you that by watching this stuff on the screen, at first it was a shock.
Yeah.
And then now it's beginning to help because now he can go back and review things that he was never treated for.
Mm-hmm.
And he can sit back now and enjoy time with his granddaughter instead of being something happened, freaked out, and now he's not communicating with people.
Yeah.
Most folks don't understand what it is to deal with somebody like that, why we'll tend to sit in the back corner of a restaurant with our back to the wall.
Yeah.
You can always walk in and pick the veterans out in the restaurant.
Yep.
It ain't hard to do. You look for the back corners and the walls and the guys just watching the exits and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that's been there.
Yeah.
And those behaviors become hard for a spouse and friends and family to understand.
Well, they're like, well, I'm trying to have a conversation with you. Are you paying attention to me? Why are you looking all over the place? Are you good? Like,
exactly.
You've been in that
before.
I've been in that situation.
It's hard to think what it can do. You get into that mind frame and you think, you begin to look at everything from a dark side. Everything's got, and I was also, I talk about myself because I was also that guy. I used to be so ashamed of this stuff, but I'm not now, thankfully. I talk about it now so that other people realize there's nothing wrong to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because this is where you're going to get help at. But I was the guy that couldn't enjoy a single thing. I couldn't enjoy going to the beach with my kids.
Because you're profiling everything
panicking.
around you.
Exactly. I'm in panic mode the whole time because somebody's going to drown or somebody's going to snatch one of my kids or something's going to go wrong. I can't go to a fair or circus because there's too much can go wrong too quick and I can't control everything.
You're
And
studying
then-
everybody.
Exactly. And then your spouse and your kids get irritated with you. I think my children have secondary PTSD because of me, me losing my mind in the middle of a grocery store or something, And I'm thankful. Thank the Lord first because I come out of it. I'm still have my issues, and they'll tell you I
Sure.
still have my days where I'm not too good. But it's now that my kids are grown and they're like, well, why didn't you do this earlier?
Yeah.
I finally got some help that I needed. And I'm just trying to help these other guys. These studies that we read, and I've gave you copies of it that you
Yeah.
look over later on, and there's more. Like I said, I've got boxes of this stuff that I've looked at. But it shows where, just like a couple of them here, there was a report written called "Is Video Games the Complementary Therapy" that talks about the veterans from the baby boomer generation who have PTSD and substance abuse issues that spend more time in the video side, but in the gaming world, said they found with these same group of people that video games became more effective than conventional modalities like cognitive behavior therapy.
Amazing.
So it doesn't just work with the younger people, it works with older people as
Right.
well. And this digital world, and we have computer stuff and other equipment, virtual reality, we've got video game consoles, pretty much their choice when they go in there. And it's not somebody standing over them telling them what to do. They can go in there and just by themselves, relax, play a game, watch something, however they want to do it. But it gets them that time that they can calm it down so they can get back in control again. There's another article in Military Times that says from virtual arenas to forums that foster camaraderie and support, gaming serves as a lifeline of social connection, cognitive rejuvenation, and professional opportunities for many veterans long after their service. A lot of these guys can get online and reconnect with people they served with.
Yeah, no matter where they live in the world.
Exactly. That community, and there are a lot of online now veteran-based gaming societies that you can join in with and play, and they're doing a great job. The one thing we're doing differently is providing that place,
Right.
an actual physical place that they can go to get away from everything. Because if
Sometimes
you're sitting
you
at
need
home,
out of the house.
exactly, and there's a reason for that too. When you're sitting there playing your video game, but you're looking at the same four walls and thinking about the same house payments and the same car payments and the phone bills and all these things are still in the back of your mind because you're looking at all of them. And, even children can stress. Everybody's got kids
Sure.
known that children can stress you out.
Yeah.
But when you're already dealing with problems and then you add that to it, and you don't want to hurt your kids. You don't want to hurt their feelings. You don't want to hurt them physically, nothing else. It's just there's times when you snap and scream at them, and then you realize I shouldn't have done that. And then you hate yourself that much worse because
Yeah,
of
you
it.
feel awful.
This allows them a place where they can just step out and go, get away from everything. We have a goal of extending this into every AMVETS post, first across the state of North Carolina.
That'd be amazing.
We have people working now. We have programmers and people, some of the same people that build the Ethernet for the Marine Corps that they do their operations through are working to help us build our own private servers to place across the state to where we can have a veteran-only community. Because believe it or not, you think about the idea of bullying a veteran doesn't sound normal on the surface, but when you take depressed and upset veterans, there's been many, many cases now that have been documented that were they committed suicide due to being bullied online. And most of the time, it's some clown sitting in a basement somewhere they've never seen again.
Doesn't understand, doesn't know, doesn't have any feelings, can't
Exactly.
talk about his emotions because he was raised doing this.
Same way. And then it's like, well, why don't you just go kill yourself? And somebody's already thinking about that or begins to feel like the world's going to be a better place without them. And then they get that constant pressure. So that's one of our phase 2. This is a 3-phase program. The phase 1 is up and happening. We have the first retreat up operating in Kinston. We have 2 more retreats being built in the western part of the state and 1 in Chesapeake, Virginia now.
Okay.
Our hope at one day down the road is to spread them all the way across the country.
Yeah.
We want to get this type of, actually accredited as a real therapy and get it employed with our troops. Because you take a young kid, say 19 years old, and there's hundreds of these cases coming home from the sandbox over there, that if you're wounded over there, it can be sometimes days before you're in a real qualified hospital. You're in a mobile hospital unit. You might be sent to a local hospital center somewhere, moved out to a hospital ship, whatever it takes to ever get you back home to a hospital that can really handle these. All it does is patch you together. There's not a lot of psychotherapy going on during that time. So you're laying there injured, and all you're doing is focusing on what injured you.
24 hours a day.
Exactly. And then when they get to a stateside hospital, they can be there anywhere from days to years, depending on how bad they're injured and how much therapy they got to have. Unfortunately, there's still very little psychotherapy going on. They might have some, but there's not a lot of long-term programs that are started at that phase. And then once they get out of there, then they've got that, an inevitable 1 to 2 year wait to get VA qualified.
Yeah.
And now they've had, 2 to 3 years sometimes, some less than that, but some that long that have had time to focus on that one incident and nothing else.
Fixate on it. It's bad.
What they're finding out is this gaming therapy, believe it or not, Oxford University did a study many years ago and has continued to run it for over 10 years and is getting some amazing results with it. And what they're doing is they're finding out that the quicker you can get somebody that's been traumatized in front of a game console. Their study covered anybody from rape victims, home invasions, car wrecks, military trauma. They did a broad spectrum just to see if there were differences in the brain and in the trauma. And what they're finding out is all PTSD is PTSD.
Right.
Now there's complex PTSD, which was only recognized in 2019. International Classification of Diseases didn't even recognize it until they listed it in 2019, which covers a lot different. That's where you get your repeated exposure, such as your military traumas, where they've had multiple incidents where their life was threatened or they're wounded, these kind of things. That the quicker you can get them playing a video game, and the one game probably most people has ever had a phone or a tablet or computer sometime in their life was Tetris. You ever played that goofy game where you flip the blocks around and drop them in?
I might still play it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That was one of the number one games they found. And the reason for it is because it teaches your brain to write logical pathways around emotions so that your brain can actually focus on the reality and not live in the emotion. But the quicker they can get you in front of a game console, the fewer trauma responses you were having. Nightmares, intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, all these things that go on. They've had some patients that they've got game consoles, and they try to get you just as soon as you're lucid. I mean, if you come in traumatized and had to have surgery, as soon as you woke up, there's a game console in your room. They found out that if you can get it to them within 6 hours of the trauma, that they're having they've had patients with as much as 85% less trauma responses recorded long term. Hospital up in Boston tried the same trick, and they're learning that patients are actually physically healing as much as 30% faster.
Wow.
Because your brain being beat down and overwhelmed, and adrenaline is one of your worst enemies in your body. It does all kinds of damage. Cortisol does all kinds of damage to your body. And if your body's fighting that and trying to heal from a wound, it interferes. So if they can break the cycle and get the brain distracted somewhere else,
and everything,
and the body heals so much quicker. And these are studies that have been going on for years now, and they're finding out that this actually has something to do with it. It works. If they can get you in there and get you playing, and one thing that happens is understand the difference between short-term and long-term memory. Your short-term memories, somebody says something, you can remember it a few hours later, the next day, whatever. But before that becomes a long-term memory, your brain actually has to focus on it a certain amount of time. This is where the quicker they can get you into this, the less problem you have long-term. Because what it literally does is interferes the process between short-term and long-term memory.
From it becoming like that core, solid.
And it breaks it down to where now you don't remember as much of it, but at the same time, your body doesn't remember how to respond to it.
Right.
Because now it's a picture, and it's
but
not
there's not
a permanent
physical
thing.
response to it.
And it's kind of an evil loop. The more the physical responses are, the more the brain pays attention to them. The more the brain pays attention to them, the more it increases the physiological responses. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
It's that wheel of death that just keeps building up. And at a point somewhere down the line, it's going to break loose.
Right.
I was one of the ones that I grew up in that world. I'm 58 years old. I grew up in that world of suck it up and get over it. That's unfortunately one of the dumbest things
I was going to say, I'm a boy mom. I'm not a fan of that at all.
No, it's...
I'm like, no, you're allowed to have emotions. Because
there's a certain amount of you know, being a man, I
Yeah.
can't speak for a woman, I can speak for being a man. There's a certain amount of, you know, the old school of kind of, you know, rub some dirt on it, keep trucking kind of
Yeah.
thing. There's a little bit of that matters because that's what drives you to grow and to do better in
Uh-huh.
life. You know, you have to lose to get that desire to
Sure.
win.
Yeah. You gotta have that
You know,
feeling.
I'm not a big fan of participation trophies.
Right.
You know, you need to lose every once in a while
Yeah.
so you learn how to fight for better.
Yes.
But at the same time, it needs to be made okay to talk about how it made you feel.
Right. Because if not,
Then you turn into this.
I agree.
And I waited for years after I got out.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had it under control. I had
Mhm.
everything packed up, compartmentalized, and
Mhm.
stuck in a closet somewhere.
Everyone thinks that
You
they
know,
have it under control when they don't.
exactly. But spending 10 years in law enforcement afterwards and then another 15 as a firefighter paramedic,
Uh-huh.
all I'm dealing with is the dark side of the world.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Horrible
get to see
things
people on
every
their best
day.
day.
Mm-mm.
You know, all I see is everybody on their worst
Yeah,
day.
you're called when something's wrong.
And you start to get into that pattern that's what the world is. There is no
Mhm.
good left in the world whatsoever. And it just keeps packing back. The day I snapped when all mine broke loose, and the way I explained it to my family, you remember watching the cartoons when the little guy opens the closet door and everything falls out in the room?
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Okay.
I was on a really bad suicide call
Mm-hmm.
and dealing, I ain't gonna get too graphic, but dealing with the things we had to do to try to keep the body pumping. All of a sudden, it all just like you open that closet door,
And everything.
everything come out at one time. And I managed to work my way through that call, but shortly thereafter, I just crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I wasn't capable of even taking care of myself, much less a family.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go through some time of being treated, and I still, to this day, and it's been a few years ago, I still go through going to therapy, going to psychiatry, going to the counselors, and these kind of things to keep me on track, keep me leveled off.
Right.
It's not something that you get healed from.
Yeah.
PTSD doesn't go away,
No.
never. But it's like a lot of things, you learn how to live with it and manage it,
Yeah.
and you got to stay on top of it to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing here with this retreat project is not a cure. We don't claim it is. It's not a treatment that fixes everything. This is a first step to get you to open up.
Right.
Because just the mere fact of leaving your house and coming there is a foot in the door.
Right.
Because you're getting out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough.
Yeah.
And then when you come there, but you're coming around people, like you said, that are like-minded, that's been through the same things you have. They know exactly what you're going through. You know, whether they, to what extent or the other, they all been there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they know when you come in there and you don't want to talk, they're not going to force you to talk.
Right.
Just
because they get it.
come here, exactly. Come in and sit down and drink a cup of coffee with us.
So, okay. So the retreat, you said it's in Kinston. It's on North Carolina 11. I was going to ask hours, but I see here you're open Tuesday through Saturday from 9 until 4.
Right.
Okay.
Until we get, it's all volunteer organization there at G.I. Joe's. So until we can get more volunteers to stay there later, then we'll start expanding the hours out as we can. We just haven't been able to get, you know, everybody's so busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have, that kind of leads me in, if we got a minute to talk about one of the other things that we're doing that is veteran-based to help give back to the community.
Sure.
Plus to draw our other veterans out of the community to let them know what's going on. We have created what we just kind of coined a little name here, but it's, you know, it's the Commanders Roundtable.
Okay.
There's 6 veteran organizations in Kinston. You know, everything from American Legion, AMVETS, Salute, Marine Corps League, VFW, VBA. All these organizations are great in what they're doing, but one organization alone can't do as much as all 6 of us together.
Mm-hmm.
So all of us commanders have come together now. We have a monthly meeting. We have one tonight. And we've created events to do with the community.
Okay.
That helps in multiple ways. One, it gets veterans out into a community setting, and it helps them cope and realize that there are people out there that care, and there is a good part to the world still. But it also lets the veterans that are out in the community that don't know us get to learn who we are, what we have available for them.
Right.
And it opens us up to the community. In, I would say 20, 25 years ago, everybody knew who all your military organizations were.
Mm-hmm.
And you interacted with them.
Right.
Now you walk down the street in Kinston and ask somebody who AMVETS is, they've never heard of us.
Right.
Or who the American Legion is, they don't know who we are.
Or they don't know what it is. They've heard of
Exactly.
it, but they're not so sure what it does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You might have seen a DAV sticker, Disabled American Veteran, somewhere, but do you really understand what that's for and who they are? Now we're going to start putting on community events to where we can reintroduce ourselves to the community. And we have a couple of really big events coming up. One of them is November 2nd. We have an event called Pop and Smoke. This is all of the organizations are coming together at a place. It's called the Beer Barn. It's over there beside a new sports shop on 70. Okay. That day is an all-day event on into the night. And there's going to be, we have a poker run going on for the motorcycles and the Jeeps. The Jeep Affair, unfortunately, had to cancel their Jeep day that they had coming up. So they're joining in with us, and we're going to have a Jeep judging. We're going to have a motorcycle judging. Yeah. We're going to do a big poker run over 3 counties. That's going to run. We're going to have breakfast out there. We're going to be selling plates. Somebody's actually donated 10 hogs to us. We're going to cook hogs and sell barbecue plates. We're going to have DJ music. We're going to have a cornhole competition. Yeah. A lot of things. And it's the entire community's invited. Everybody. We want everybody to come out there. October 26th, we're going to do what we call the Veteran Harvest Festival. We're going to have the Noose Way Nature Center. If you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I've been there.
All right. We're going to be out there that day from probably around 1 to 5. We're going to be feeding people. We're going to have events. We've got businesses from around town that are going to come out and help us out with this thing, put up, have vendors, all this stuff. You've got the playgrounds for the kids and stuff. And what we're going to do is the 6 organizations are going to buy a ton of hot dogs, and we're going to cook hot dogs and feed people for free. And let the kids come out and play. We're going to have inflatables out there. They can do all kinds of things. And then at 5 o'clock, we're going to do a trunk or treat and a touch a truck.
No, that's awesome.
We got the National Guard and the Power Company. Of course, all the EMS, fire, and everybody else is coming. And then there's going to be all kinds of people out there with their trunks set up with candy. The kids can come and get candy and stuff like that. And again, that's about introducing the veterans back to the community, letting them know that we're still serving and that there's things that the community can do to help us as well. So we've created our own little mottos called Unity in the Community. There's been people out there such as Eric Cantu, Ted Sampley, some others, old school guys that try for years and years and years to make this happen. And unfortunately, it happened after their passing. But they worked so hard for the last 20 to 30 years to make these things come together. And now we're finally coming together as one big unit to work. And we're using the Salute name, which Salute, a tribute to American veterans, is the parent company that owns G.I. Joe's. They're responsible for putting on pretty much anything that's veteran around Kinston and that part of Lenoir County. It comes through them. They always have been. We have many, many other things going on. I'll leave a calendar with you so you can see some of them yourself. But we have events scheduled all the way out through February. And all of these are the units working together.
Yeah, that's great. We can link that on our website to where people can go and see. Yeah, you've got a ton of things going on all the way through next year. You got it scheduled.
And there's going to be more. There's more coming. But we've learned, like I said, if we work together, we can do more. We can raise the funds we need to keep these things going. Every individual organization has their stuff going on. The Legion Post, we have our own shooting team starting up. I don't know if you're aware or not, but the American Legion is responsible for sending a lot of our Olympic shooters over the past years. Okay. The Legion started in World War I. Yeah. Okay, and a lot of our professional competitive shooters, we have guys that come out of the Legions and go straight into FBI academies and things like that.
That's awesome.
Our shooter program's huge. We have our own baseball team. All these are geared toward bringing youth off the streets and teaching them something that they can get involved in and create a better life for them. We've got art classes coming up this school year. We're going to have some other things going on for kids. We've partnered. The PD's asked the veteran organizations, can y'all help us get kids off the street? So this is what we're trying to do. Yeah. We want to work with them to try to offer as many programs as we can. All the different organizations are reaching out to try to get youth programs going on and to create that unity again. Yeah. Where people know who we are, they can depend on us, we can depend on them, and we can get things done. Hopefully we can make a change.
Yeah. Well, I love everything that you're doing.
I know I've kind of talked your ear off here this
No,
morning,
but
but it's a lot.
I mean, it's all. I don't want to call it interesting because so much of it is it's sad that we're in the situation that we're in with a lot of it. But it is interesting and it's awesome all of the connections that you've made with how to help it and all the things that you guys are trying to do. So I mean, it's just like you said, it's just getting it out there and making sure that everybody knows what you're doing and when you're doing it. And we'll link all your events on all of our pages and things like that. And I appreciate you coming in and talking with us.
Well, thank you so much for letting me come. I mean, this helps us in ways you can imagine. It's just getting the word out there and teach. This is where I spend. Fortunately, I'm retired now, so I have a little bit more time to do things. But I keep telling everybody I'm gonna have to go back to work so I can rest. I spend my days teaching and counseling and working with people and working with veterans one-on-one, seeking out homeless veterans, seeking out ones that need help, and going and educating people on what we're doing. It was a re-education for me. Now I'm trying to re-educate other people.
Yeah.
We're in danger of losing a generation if we don't do something about it.